The Iranian Guard launched a new wave of attacks as part of Operation True Promise 3 against strategic areas in Israel. It responds to the recent Zionist aggressions against the Persian country. Palestinian authorities updated that the Israeli occupation forces hit to death several needed civilians at the aid distribution centers in the Gaza Strip. And a massive manhunt is still underway on Sunday in the United States for the suspect behind the fatal shooting of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belen de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We now begin with the information. The Iranian Guard launched a new wave of attacks as part of Operation True Promise 3 against several strategic areas in Israel in response to the recent Zionist aggressions against the Persian country. The Iranian army hit dozens of missiles in cities such as Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Ashkelon. According to the authorities, the attacks are targeting several strategic installations, including companies and military centers. For the time being, several people are reported injured and buildings affected, airports and warfare artifacts factories, while northern Israel turns on its alarms as well. In addition, Iranian media reported that Ben Gurion Airport and the Navatim Air Base were hit by ballistic missiles launched from Iran. Thousands of Israelis were called to take shelter from the wave of attacks by Iranian forces, while facilities and air traffic remain closed. Land border crossings with Jordan and the Sinai are operating normally, providing an alternative route to Israel. On the other hand, destruction and fires were reported in the community of Kiryat Gat, Palestinian territory occupied by Israel. Another number of missiles also hit on Sunday the zones occupied by the Zionism in response to the attacks and threats of Benjamin Netanyahu's government. According to local media, people were reported killed and wounded by the Iranian responses. It should also be noted that Jordan made unsuccessful attempts to intercept Iranian missiles headed for Israel, demonstrating the vulnerability of the so-called Zionist Iron Dome to Tehran's high-tech missiles. It is important to note that the U.S. THAAD missile defense system also failed in its attempt to hinder attacks on occupied Jordan. There are U.S. military bases in that Middle Eastern country under the pretext of supposedly protecting global security and energy in the volatile region. Iran's air defense has succeeded in intercepting several Israeli attacks. The defense network was activated in the city of Tabriz around the Shekari military airbase against hostile targets, which have been successfully destroyed. The Israeli regime intended to carry out attacks against the railway system in an area in Bastonabad and in a civilian area in Marand, attempts which were thwarted by the successful operation of the defense network. The Iranian defense has also successfully engaged and intercepted hostile targets in the city of Sanadash. Now, in this context, in Iran, the Ministry of Health announced that attacks by the Zionist regime took the lives of 224 people. The health ministry affirmed that most of the dead and wounded are civilians, especially women and children, in attacks on residential areas. The attacks carried out by the Zionist entity since last Friday affected 18 Iranian provinces, with F-35 fighters, ballistic and cruise missiles, and drones, among other weapons. At least 10 of the fatalities are scientists and personnel of nuclear power facilities, and 3 are senior Iranian army commanders. The Iranian foreign minister accused the Trump administration of collaborating with Israel in the recent attacks on the Islamic Republic.
We count up with broad evidence of how U.S. forces aided the Zionist regime. But beyond our evidence, the statements of President Trump are even more revealing. On his tweets yesterday, and on his interviews, where he openly expressed his support, he clearly asserted that such an operation would not have been possible without U.S. equipment, and that further steps would be taken. Therefore, from our perspective, the United States is complicit in these attacks and must hold responsibility.
And we stay on topic as earlier today, Israeli forces strike civilian areas of the Iranian capital of Tehran, again as part of their Zionist campaign against regional countries. According to reports, the Israeli attacks were carried out against North Tehran, a region with more than 15 million inhabitants. In this regard, the Iranian air defense activated its systems to intercept the Zionist drones and guarantee the safety of the population. The attacks targeted several strategic areas in Iran, including Mehrabad Airport, one of the main airports in the Persian country. And also, Israeli agents detonated at least 5 car bombs near government and police buildings in Tehran. This came after Iranian air defense repelled Israeli attacks. Authorities also registered floods following the destruction of civilian water structure by Mossad agents in the Iranian capital. Health authorities registered 128 fatalities and over 900 injuries since the onset of the Israeli aggression. And U.S. President Donald Trump made some lately statements on its stance regarding the ongoing Israel-Iran war escalation. In this context, the Republican leader advanced that Washington could get involved in Israel-Iran conflict in the near future. However, he allegedly assured not having had any participation so far. He further deemed that Russia could be a potential mediator grounded in Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed him so on a long talk that they had recently. Likewise, the head of state commented to be open to continued negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, even though the 6th round in Oman was scrapped due to the current conflict. More international repercussions. The government of Iran expressed on Sunday its support to Iran's response to the Israeli attacks against the Persian nation's nuclear facilities. During a conversation with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian, Iraq's Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani reaffirmed his nation's support to Tehran and described the Israeli onslaught as a blatant Zionist aggression. The Iraqi leader also stressed that Baghdad's commitment to the security and stability of the region and to preventing the conflict from escalating. On his part, the Iranian president thanked al-Sudani and accused Israel of repeatedly attacking the countries of the region. And in Brazil, social organizations rallied in the city of Sao Paulo on Sunday to demand the government end diplomatic relations with Israel. The demonstration was attended by political leaders and pro-Palestinian organizations, which urged the executive to cut off the oil supply to the Zionist regime. The participants carried banners and chanted slogans in rejection of the massacre carried out by the Israel regime against the Palestinian people. They also condemned the new wave of aggression by Tel Aviv against the nuclear and military plans of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We will have more on this topic, but now we have a short break. But first, remember to join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue going over the situation in the Middle East. Palestinian authorities updated that the Israeli occupation forces hit to death several civilians in need at 8 distribution centers in the Gaza Strip. Official briefings detailed that some 5 Palestinians lost their lives and several were injured as a result of the Israeli army targeted a starving group begging for help near the Netzarim corridor. In addition, 2 Palestinians were killed due to a Zionist incursion into the Han Yunis city. In this context, Gazan Health Ministry has denounced that Israel and the United States have been using those 8 distribution centers as a bait to annihilate more Gazans. They noted that they have implemented some gruesome strategy for 30 days, and moreover, Palestinian authorities specified that the brutal Israeli offensive brought about 42 deaths in the last day. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces detained 17 Palestinians during a series of raids in the occupied West Bank. According to local security sources, 9 citizens were arrested in the province of Nablus after the Zionist army raided several residential buildings. Likewise, 8 people were also reportedly arrested in the districts of Tulkarem and Bethlehem amid the Israeli regime's raids and destructions of several homes and businesses' premises. These raids, perpetrated by the occupation forces, are carried out almost daily, mainly during the night hours, where many Palestinians end up being arbitrarily detained. Trade unions and students, indigenous and social organizations in Panama denounced on Sunday the government repression against the indigenous communities of Boca del Toro. The indigenous peoples of the northwest coast of the country rejected the approval of Law 462 of the Social Security Fund and said that they don't want their children and grandchildren to be enslaved and that the only home they own to be devoured by the mining advance the government is trying to impose. The demonstrators rejected President Molino's decision to send the police, military units and airplanes against internationally protected communities and accused the Panamanian government of negotiating sovereignty and water behind the backs of the people while imposing an iron censorship against all those who oppose it. More than 250 mayors from all the provinces of Argentina gathered to express their rejection of former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's conviction. The communal chiefs agreed in describing the decision of the Supreme Court of Justice in the Vialidad case as an orchestrated persecution. The leaders committed themselves to organize during the weekend multiple territorial meetings to ensure a massive participation in the mobilization called for next June 18th. The demonstrations in support of the former president are multiplying in different parts of the national territory, demonstrating a support that transcends the weather adversities. Meanwhile, on Saturday, in spite of the rain and low temperatures, political and social organizations grouped in Argentina Humana carried out a rally in Lezama Park in the city of Buenos Aires and then marched to the residence of Cristina Fernández, where a permanent vigil was held in support of the Argentinian former president. The demonstrators rejected what they qualify as a maneuver of political prescription promoted by sectors of the economic and judicial power in the country. We go now to Chile as social organizations pay tribute to revolutionary leader Ernesto Che Guevara on his 97th birthday in conjunction with commemorative activities by Chilean writers. The Chilean Writers Society was the protagonist of the homage that counted with the presence of multiple militants of different political spaces. Also, representatives from Cuba made documentary tours with videos, photographs, music, and dances, bringing the memory and life of Che Guevara to the Latin American countries. And on the Brazil-Caribbean Summit held on Saturday in Brasilia, President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva condemned the global indifference to the Haitian crisis. On the meeting, which gathered leaders and representatives from 17 countries, the Brazilian head of state repudiated the fact that Haiti be eternally doomed to pay for its freedom. Therefore, attendees approved several projects to improve Haitian current situation, as well as the disbursement of urgent aid. Furthermore, participants urged to help rebuild Haiti and facilitate a credible democratic process. In the summit context, they further tackled main concerning regional issues such as climate change, food security, and energy connectivity. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, President Luis Arce announced that he will continue operations to remove roadblocks in regions disrupted by protests, demanding that former President Evo Morales be allowed to run in upcoming elections. Arce reported that police and military forces are working to lift the blockades in Potosí, Chiquisaca, and Santa Cruz. In this regard, authorities are taking action to guarantee free transit and the safety of citizens and prevent food shortages. President Arce also condemned acts of political violence and what he described as illegal methods in the exercise of democracy. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. A massive manhunt is still underway on Sunday in the United States for the suspect behind the fatal shooting of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband. According to authorities, the suspect wore a mask and posed as a police officer during the shooting, in which State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were also injured. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said that Hoffman and his wife were each shot multiple times, but they are now out of surgery and receiving medical care. He described the shooting as a politically motivated, although no details on a possible motive have been provided yet. And in this context, on Sunday, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar updated on the condition of injured Senator John Hoffman and the status of the manhunt after his attacker.
They are hanging in there. His wife was out of surgery first, and she's actually texted some of our mutual friends, and he may face some additional surgeries, but he is also in stable condition right now, from what I know. So they had multiple gun wounds, and were able to, the first responders were there, the police were there, got them to the hospital, and then had the presence of mind to go over to Leader Hortman's house, and that's where they found this perpetrator, this man who seemed to have no limits in terms of the murderous acts that he committed. We believe he's somewhere in the vicinity and that they are going to find him. But right now, everyone's on edge here because we know that this man will kill.
We stay in the United States as tensions rose in the streets of downtown Los Angeles as police tried to disperse protesters. As police fired flashbangs and canisters of tear gas, protesters responded with loud fireworks and calls to hold the line. Masses of demonstrators crowded the streets, parks, and squares across the U.S. on Saturday to protest President Donald Trump, marching through downtowns and small towns, blaring anti-authoritarian chants mixed with support for protecting democracy and immigrant rights. Confrontations were isolated. However, Police used tear gas and crowd control munitions to clear out protesters in Los Angeles, where protests over federal immigration enforcement raids erupted a week earlier and sparked demonstrations across the country. In other news, a helicopter crashed on Sunday in the northern India state of Uttarakhand, killing all 7 people on board, a local media reported. It was an Iranian aviation company helicopter with 1 pilot and 6 passengers on board, 5 adult pilgrims and 1 child. The aircraft crashed at about 5:20 local time in a forest between Gaurikund and Somprayang, while on the short flight from Kedarnath temple to Guptashik town. According to preliminary information, the accident was the result of bad weather and technical problems. We now continue with other topics. At least 19 people have died in the Republic of the Congo, capital city Kinshasa, due to floods triggered by torrential rains. According to local media, the weather event has caused severe damage, including the collapse of houses and the obstruction of roads. Last April, floods in Kinshasa killed at least 22 people and cut off access to over half the city and the country's main airport. After the April catastrophe, the authorities had ordered the demolition of infrastructure and illegal houses built in at-risk areas to prevent future floodings. However, in early May, the city was again hit by rains that claimed the lives of 11 people. And the National Hydrometeorological Forecast Center of Vietnam reported that at least 5 provinces could be affected by floods and landslides caused by Typhoon Wu-Tip. The meteorological agency warned the population to be on the lookout for potential disaster risks as rain is expected over the weekend. It also pointed out that flash floods and landslides could negatively impact the environment and endanger lives. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Environment has stated that it will monitor the rainfall to prevent and minimize damage. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.